Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here today to be able to talk to you a little bit about global randomization and inventory awareness and how that links into selecting the right IRT partner. So I'll start with just a quick introduction to myself here. So I'm Heather DiFrusicia. I'm the Associate Director of IWRS and RTSM. We love abbreviations, as all of you know. So everything to do with randomization and trial supply management is with me and my team. So here, just a little bit about Axiom. So when we're talking about studies completed, largest randomization trial, we have about 700 plus. It's always continuously growing. Our largest being 40,000 subjects. And of course, we have experience across many therapeutic areas. And we are coming up to our 20 years soon enough. When we're talking about Axiom Fusion, our platform, our Fusion eClinical Suite, we started out with EDC and we grew and continued to, over those almost 20 years, to include data management, of course, RTSM, the randomization, as well as the trial supply management side, CTMS, ePro, and all of that comes together into a unified solution. And we'll talk a little bit about the benefits of that unified platform today. So really, as I noted, it's a unified platform. So Fusion really is your connected hub for all of your study data, all of the different pieces. And you can see that here, as you can see, are different buckets of our modules. So we're talking about EDC, data management, our ePro, and that's, of course, the app, web, and phone, as well as our eConsent module. Other highlights, of course, are randomization and our inventory management, and we can't forget our data import and our dashboards. And all of this is available through a single logon, and of course, there's lots of benefits that come from that. But let's talk through about our topics for today. So we're going to talk about IRT in today's time, our selection tips, so a little bit of a checklist for you to take away with today, our approach to IRT, how do we get it done in a quick timeline, as well as just some updates on some recent projects. Of course, our key terms, we don't want to forget about those. So everything really, it means the same thing. We're talking about randomization, we're talking about inventory management, and of course, IRT down to RTSM being the more recent terminology, and of course, really highlighting that all-encompassing functionality and the importance of both the randomization and that inventory piece. So let's talk about today's time. And of course, today's time means COVID-19. And so there's impacts all throughout, including on the randomization side. We're talking about screening, enrollment delays, changes to eligibility requirements potentially, as well as inventory challenges. And that really is at all levels. So we're looking at the manufacturer, supplier, all the way through to the subjects. That includes procurement delays, delays for shipments. And that can be to the depot, or it can be to the site. We have on-site monitoring visit limitations, and of course, the subject piece is a part that we can't miss out on there, and that's because the subjects might not be able to return to site for dispensing. We of course experienced that earlier this year, and there's the potential for that to be upon us again. So utilizing options of couriering additional inventory directly from the site if it's already on site, and then of course if your depot partners are able to support it and the inventory is still at the depot, then the direct-to-patient shipping model is really helpful. And so that's also part of your selection for depot partners. The last piece is an important piece as well. We'll talk about this a little bit today, and that's the accountability piece. So being able to track accountability remotely, not just a paper diary, but being able to, in real time, be able to monitor compliance through ePro. So let's talk a little bit about things that we want to keep in mind, considerations when you're selecting your IRT partner. So really, we want to make sure that you're understanding your needs and you're clearly communicating them. So I'm already giving you some homework here. We want to make sure that you have aligned your internal stakeholders, and that's not just on the study requirements, but also, of course, on those timelines. We need to make sure that you're communicating those, so then we can make sure there's accurate quotes being provided. You're going to minimize change orders later down the road, and you're making sure it's a good fit, and it's not just for you, it's both ways. We're looking for a good fit for both parties. On the technology capabilities, so is this an IRT only provider? Is it EDC with a separate IRT, meaning that they have an IRT partner themselves? Or are you looking at a full eClinical suite where everything is already integrated? And of course, within those options, sometimes there's some more flexibility. So is there the option for standalone versus EDC, as well as additional modules? Other key aspects are the agility. So are they able to launch quickly, as well as the flexibility piece that is essential, as we just kind of laid the groundworks there on some challenges experienced during the COVID pandemic. A little bit more on the technology piece. So when we're talking about technology, so the site inventory needs really are multifaceted. There's different aspects. So is the system going to accurately capture your current inventory status? Is the site thresholds, are they flexible? So can they be updated? Does it need to require a scheduled update, or is it going to be updated in real time? Can you update it? And the anticipated and upcoming needs. So can you look ahead at planned activities, as well as kind of anticipate what those activities are based on historical data? Coming back to our selection checklist, we have support. So what is the IRT's approach to startup? Is it very hands-on? What kind of consulting opportunities are there? Or are they pretty restricted within their scope of work? For ongoing support, so this is not just up to and leading up to your launch. This is once the launch is done, are they done as well? So it's up to you to manage that independently, or is there continued IRT management and monitoring, as well as what kind of customer support desk? Is it 24/7? Is it more restricted? And is it available in multiple languages as well? For data access, then you want to be thinking ahead, not just during the study, but also at the end of study. Are they going to be able to support your reporting requirements? Do they have standards? Do they have the ability to customize? And what's the availability of being able to generate those reports? Again, coming back to that kind of 24/7 access, not only to the support, but also your data. The other aspect is the end of study outputs and what's available for the sponsor versus any site level requirements. So quite the checklist for you. So let's talk a little bit about how we do IRT here at Axiom. So we do have both the RTSM team and the technology. So we have our IWRS randomization module, as well as the CTM tracking module. And those are supported and managed by the RTSM team. So we're not only providing that platform to monitor all of those activities, we're actively supporting, actively monitoring all of the activities during the study. So again, just coming back to this page that we saw earlier, again, it's a single logon. So if you do want to utilize any additional modules, then of course you can take advantage of that centralized approach, not needing additional integrations because it's built in. So all of these modules are available, of course, including the two key ones that we're talking about today. As we noted, flexibility is something that you should be looking for. Do you want to just have a select few modules? Are you just looking for randomization, just inventory, or just the two? Or are you looking for EDC plus those modules, or are you looking for other modules as well? What kind of data do you need to capture, and what might you potentially be capture in other systems when you can have everything in one place, that full control. So a little bit more on the tools here. So we support simple to complex randomization, of course, fully integrated, and that's linked with your inventory. So everything from central to site-specific randomization, the list generation, and all of those items in between. And of course, that the ability to visualize all of that, whether it's reports or configurable dashboards. One thing we want to talk a little bit more is about the flexibility and ability to tailor the eligibility controls. And again, the full benefit is experienced when you're utilizing the full suite. And because that gives you that extra flexibility, extra control with minimizing the potential redundancies at the site level. So here you can see we have our subject eligibility. It's calculated in the IRT, but you can see we're pulling in those subject details from the EDC. We're pulling in the eligibility and any kind of key complex comparisons, again, from the EDC. We have our minimum inventory requirements coming from the IRT, of course, as well as any other key modules. And so that could be ePro, for example. So maybe you have you're monitoring rescue medication use as part of the screening and eligibility. That can be tied in, or other key questionnaires. Adjudication is a great example as well. If you're looking for a centralized independent approval prior to enrolling, then that can also calculate in. And again, this is all one system and single logon. So what does that mean? So you're looking at centralized data to determine your eligibility. You're eliminating that need for redundant data entry, especially when you're talking about stratification factors, etc. And there isn't any concerns about delayed or stale data if you're using a system that has to be integrated with an additional IRT partner. So lots of flexibility and control. The other side is that global inventory awareness. So everything from inventory levels, requests, shipments, pending activities, from the program-wide inventory all the way down to that site and subject level accountability. And of course, in between, we have our depot management, integrations with all major depots there, and the site inventory activities, including temperature excursions, quarantine management. So one part which we were talking a little bit about before is that we have that multifaceted inventory resupply. And so it's not just, of course, looking at a dispensing schedule. There's a bunch of different factors that are coming in. And so looking at our approach, that unified approach, you can see those upcoming needs. And so we have the pre-screening, screening activity that can be captured in that single database, along with the subject status updates. So usually you need to go in and confirm a subject has discontinued. There's a drug interruption or a dose change. There's no need to log into multiple places, multiple systems to be able to obtain or confirm that information. The other side is accountability. And that's when we're talking about that assignment step, which can sometimes be separate from that dispensing confirmation. What does that mean when you have everything in one place? Of course, no reconciliations. So you can also additionally look at trends. So maybe there's weight-based dosing, and you can look at weight changes in advance of that upcoming visit and determine if you need additional IP. The other aspect, looking at the ePro, which we were touching on earlier, is that when you're capturing rescue medication use or IP use, and you can identify needs for retraining if it's a compliance issue, or for ordering if you need that additional IP, especially helpful when we're talking about those scenarios where we have more remote visits. So we've talked a little bit about how you choose your partner. We've talked a little bit about our approach, and just extending on that, how do you do that when you need to do it in a quick timeline, which is more than often the case, especially these days. So a couple of, well, quite a few different areas that we're going to touch on is determining your needs, our approach on initiating the base configuration immediately, the requirements and workflows, communication, integrations and migrations, as well as approach to training. So starting with determining your needs. So we focus on that pre-kickoff kind of brainstorming session just to have that high-level information sharing that of course extends from that hopefully very informative RFP. And from there, we're able to do a couple of things. So one, we have our base configuration. So we're initiating that basically at the time of award, and that gives us that head start. And we can continue that kind of head start based on those high-level discussions and how that flows into our next steps. So in addition to that kickoff, then you're also going to be having multiple working sessions to define the requirements. And so it's very workflow based. So we walk through those workflows together. And one thing that I like to, and everyone definitely says that about me too, and the team, is that we ask too many questions, and we recommend that on both sides. You want to ask as many questions as you can think of. You don't want to be assuming anything. You want to have everything laid out and clearly defined. Another item is communication. So that meeting frequency is really important, and it really is determined based on the number of open items from those initial discussions, as well as what timeline are we working on. So we might be looking at weekly meetings, we might be doing bi-weekly, we might need ad hoc. And so it all depends, and we kind of adjust as needed. But sometimes you need those multiple meetings, especially for jumping on a teleconference and kind of having a mini working session when you're doing live document review. And that we get to that in a moment. So for integrations and migrations, so defining that communication flow is key. So this is more so, so on the integration side, that's when you're setting up kind of from initial, but for migrations, that's when we're talking about those mid-study changes, and those happen quite frequently. And so it's important to define that communication flow, initiate contact early, as well as prepare backup plans as required, especially when you're talking about those tight timelines. So for training, again, defining those training methods, it seems easy enough. But when we're talking about that, is there an investigator meeting or an interim coordinator meeting that's going to occur? Is it live sessions that are best? Is there going to be a pre-recorded video? And we do recommend kind of a mix of both. That pre-recorded video is not only helpful for that initial training, but also kind of refresher trainings and giving the flexibility to the site personnel so that they can watch those on their time. Of course, scheduling those initial trainings prior to go live as much as possible so you can really start rolling out and activating as soon as possible. And that's specifically key when we're talking about those mid-study transitions. So the training becomes even more of a key item when we're talking about those mid-study transitions. So a couple of notes just to wrap up today is monitoring progress against the timeline. So of course we need to keep on track. So reviewing progress weekly at minimum, and that goes back to how often are we meeting. And as well, making sure to escalate and communicate those potential risks for delays. And potential is key, not just once it's delayed, but on an ongoing basis. The other aspect is mitigating plans for those possible delays. So document turnaround can be a challenge. We make sure to conduct live document reviews, or at least we are proponents of that. The other aspects are UAT delays, so again, conducting it live, as well as any potential vendor delays for integrations and migrations. Be ready and have that plan B, starting with a manual transfer shipment if required, just to make sure that you could meet those timelines and make sure that there's no interruptions. Just really quickly on the COVID support. So of course, there's been a lot of activity there. Flexible resupply strategies and accountability was critical. So triggering shipments per region as needed, modifying auto-resupply either in or out depending on the requirements, and of course, being able to track those remote dispensing. We just have some highlights for some recent projects. Just wanted to specifically touch on the global COP-COV clinical trial. And we utilize EDC, ePro, and randomization and reporting for this study. And on that note, we just want to say thank you for your time today. I'm glad that you came to talk to us about our unified approach and the benefits of IRT there. So thank you, and please email us. You can see our email there. We're happy to set up a session to talk to you about our capabilities and our platform that we have. Thanks, everyone.